The British military has recently undergone a major reorganization for the first time in decades. Ukraine is said to be planning a similar move soon. The problem is that the British nuclear submarine force is currently experiencing a significant gap in its capabilities, and there are concerns about the future of the Royal Navy. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. The British government has carried out the largest military reorganization in decades. According to Politico, the British government will announce its defense investment plan on June 30. The Ministry of Defense says this plan benchmarks the Ukrainian military's success in destroying high-value targets with inexpensive weapons and systems, and in shortening the innovation cycle from years to weeks. The key point to focus on here is why the Royal Navy made this decision. For a long time, the UK maintained its naval power centered around large destroyers, frigates, and aircraft carriers. It was a country that stuck to the traditional concept that controlling the sea required massive warships. But this time, they've decided to make a major change in direction. They announced that they will stop investing in the construction plan for up to 8 Type 83 guided missile destroyers and the Type 32 frigate project, and instead redirect that budget to unmanned capabilities. From now on, they plan to introduce at least 6 new joint combat ships and operate their forces by integrating and commanding the Type 93 unmanned anti-submarine vessels and the Type 91 unmanned missile platforms. They're planning to change the very concept of the Navy so that the manned combat ships will command and control multiple unmanned systems at once. The background behind the UK's decision is the war in Ukraine. At the start of the war, Ukraine had almost no proper large naval forces. Ukraine lacked destroyers or cruisers to directly challenge the Russian Black Sea Fleet and was seen as outmatched by traditional naval standards. Ukraine used new tactics, combining maritime drones and long-range missiles. Rather than directly confronting costly warships, they deployed many mobile unmanned systems to pressure Russian vessels and attack ported forces, greatly restricting the Black Sea Fleet's range. Leading military experts around the world have observed through this war that a single large warship, they have confirmed that multiple low-cost unmanned systems can be much more effective, and the UK has also begun to actively embrace this change. Even the Air Force has decided to expand the use of unmanned systems, announcing plans to focus its budget on developing unmanned combat aircraft that can fly alongside manned fighters. Through this, the UK expects to partially achieve NATO's new goal of spending 3.5% of its GDP on defense by 2035. However, there are also many concerns about these changes. Some military experts continue to point out that the UK may be putting too much emphasis on a single type of military power. In particular, some evaluations say that this resembles the je ne sais strategy that France pursued in the past. At that time, France underwent a massive transformation. Using small-scale forces like torpedo warfare allowed for confronting major navies at lower costs and initially drew attention. But as technology and countermeasures advanced, effectiveness declined and large warships regained importance. Recalling these cases, some worry the UK may repeat past mistakes. Drones and unmanned systems do offer clear advantages. They can strike high-value targets at low cost and reduce casualties since people avoid dangerous missions. The production speed of these forces is much faster than that of traditional military assets, and it also takes less time to apply new technologies. It's clear these forces are highly competitive in modern warfare. However, as defensive and offensive technologies develop together, advances in electronic jamming, AI interception, laser weapons, and electronic warfare could make current drone tactics less effective. Over-reliance on unmanned systems might then become a bigger weakness. Therefore, experts stress that even while preparing for future battlefields, traditional naval forces like destroyers and escort ships should still be maintained. The growing view is that adding new weapons and maintaining current forces are not alternatives, but challenges that must be tackled together. The Royal Navy's crisis can't be explained just by restructuring. A bigger issue is that its key strategic asset, the nuclear submarine force, isn't operating normally.
That's the point.
The military specialist media outlet OPEX 360 reported on June 28 that the Royal Navy was unable to deploy even a single nuclear attack submarine for missions, despite operational guidelines requiring them to maintain such a force. Due to technical defects and delays in maintenance schedules, all available forces are currently tied up in port. Nuclear submarines are not only responsible for tracking enemy submarines and escorting aircraft carrier groups, but they are also the core force to be deployed first in case of emergency. The fact that this entire force is out of action at the same time means there is a significant gap in the Royal Navy's operational capability. The background of these problems lies in long-standing, accumulated structural issues. Britain has steadily reduced its defense budget and enforced austerity, weakening its defense industry foundation. Despite higher priority for submarine forces, personnel and facility shortages were still hard to avoid. The SS-22 class nuclear submarine project has had ongoing delays and major cost overruns. Costs rose so much that building one vessel required about $2 billion, and production took longer than in major military powers.
It became much longer.
While they failed to secure new forces in time, the aging of existing forces continued, and the maintenance burden kept increasing. In addition, the lack of maintenance infrastructure is also considered a serious problem. The UK has very limited facilities for maintaining nuclear submarines, and there are not enough docks equipped with radiation safety equipment or skilled technicians. If the maintenance of one vessel is delayed, the schedules of the submarines waiting behind it are also pushed back in succession, causing the available forces to decrease rapidly. People in the UK have been warning about these issues for a long time. Philip Mathias, a retired Rear Admiral responsible for nuclear policy at the UK Ministry of Defence, strongly criticised the UK's declining ability to manage its nuclear submarine program. Prolonged management failures and a lack of personnel training have accumulated, causing the fleet's operational rate to continue to decline, and there are ongoing assessments that this is significantly affecting the strategic reliability of the Royal Navy. First, there's something we should address directly. The Royal Navy's capability gap affects more than just the UK. Analysts believe Russia will benefit most. The UK has played a crucial role in tracking Russian submarines in the North Atlantic, especially at the Gyuk Gap, a key choke point linking Greenland, Iceland, and the UK that Russian subs cross to reach the Atlantic. Since the Cold War, NATO has treated this region as critical.
This is the reason why.
British attack nuclear submarines conduct missions to track and monitor Russian submarines in this area, supporting NATO's anti-submarine operations. However, if the current situation continues where the British attack nuclear submarine fleet cannot properly deploy, there is a possibility that this surveillance network could also be affected. For Russia, the pressure it faces when deploying submarines into the North Atlantic could be reduced compared to before. NATO may face a greater burden as other members take on missions previously managed by the UK. If the US or French navies deploy more forces, changes to NATO's operational plans could become necessary. It's hard to say this will instantly give Russia military superiority. NATO is a collective defense system, so there are enough ways to cover gaps left by other countries. However, the UK is considered one of the key pillars of NATO's naval power along with the US, and the very fact that the UK's core forces are unable to operate normally for an extended period is being analyzed as a strategically advantageous signal for Russia. This is exactly why NATO needs to expedite the recovery of the UK's naval power. So, it seems that they have introduced relatively inexpensive drone capabilities and weapon systems to restore their military strength. Then, why did the UK make such a bold decision? Here, not only military reasons but also financial realities played a major role. The British government announced that it would strengthen its defense capabilities, but at the same time, it faces several challenges such as fiscal deficits, economic slowdown, and increased welfare spending.
Are facing these challenges together.
In a situation where the defense budget cannot be increased indefinitely, continuing to build large warships in the traditional way is too much of a burden, as it costs trillions of won just to build a single modern destroyer. When you add maintenance costs, crew salaries, and repair expenses to this, the long-term costs become even greater. It's not over once a warship is built. It's a structure that requires massive amounts of budget to be continuously invested over decades. Unmanned systems may have high initial development costs, but can be mass-produced and quickly replace losses. In the Ukraine war, affordable drones have repeatedly attacked warships or tanks worth tens of billions of won, making cost-effectiveness key in military strategy. The UK has also aimed to maximize military power within a limited defense budget, reflecting this shift. In other words, this reorganization is both a choice to respond to new forms of warfare and a realistic decision that takes into account the tight national finances.